With that, I'll turn to my distinguished ranking member, Senator Grassley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to our panel of experts. If the federal government is going to remain ready to respond to the natural disasters and national emergencies, we have to have the capability of doing that, and it seems to me that begs to put the nation's fiscal house in order. Yet, even with interest on our national debt, and that is set to surpass defense spending this year, the majority refuses to write a budget or work together to curb reckless Washington spending. This week is more of the same with our 19th hearing on climate change. President Biden and the majority would like us all to ignore our exploding $34 trillion debt. The majority hopes that we stop discussing how unchecked deficit spending has fueled inflation, hammering hardworking Americans, and I will say shortly, has something to do with driving up the cost of insurance. Families now face prices that are 20% higher than when President Biden took office. 65% of Americans report that entrenched inflation has made the financial situation worse off under the Biden administration, and that's not Chuck Grassley, that's according to the Federal Reserve. Moreover, recent high interest rates have contributed to Americans struggling to pay record high credit. That means their credit card bills or afford a home mortgage. As Federal Reserve Chairman Powell has said, quote, "It's probably time or past time to get back to an adult conversation about elected officials." I missed something. Among elected officials, about getting the federal government back on a sustainable fiscal path, end of quote. Absent corrective action, Iowans, and for that matter, all Americans, will be faced with even higher interest rates, lower incomes, and elevated inflation, and that'll be the situation for years to come. As to the subject of today's hearing, we've seen this show before. The majority continues to crusade against American fossil fuel companies. They want to bully insurers into abandoning their diversified portfolios so they stop underwriting all fossil fuel projects. If the majority get their way, Americans can expect to pay much more to put gas in their cars and to heat their homes. Now, I've done battle with big oil in the past, particularly when it comes to their opposition to biofuels. And I support reasoned oversight over insurance companies. But oversight isn't the same thing as advocacy that seeks to punish those that hold different views from one's own. As Justice Sotomayor wrote in last week's unanimous NRA versus Volo decision, quote, "Government officials cannot attempt to coerce private parties in order to punish or suppress views that the government disfavors," end of quote. Insurance premiums are far too high across the board and may increase after the recent storms, including those very storms in my state of Iowa. Climate change isn't the primary driver of insurance rates hikes, and collapse of the insurance industry isn't imminent, although I'll have to say Iowa had 6 property and casualty companies pull out of insuring Iowans. Climate change doesn't explain why auto insurance premiums in 2024 have increased by a whopping 20% year over year. It also doesn't account for the consistent failure of liberal cities to fight crime, which has raised insurance risk and even caused insurers to deny coverage. Expensive liberal policies, not climate change, are much to blame for these market dynamics. Insurance companies and reinsurers are scrambling to wrangle inflation like the rest of us. Disasters cost more than ever because the goods and services are much more expensive. Moreover, there are more rich people living in areas affected by weather, all the way from Newport down to Miami Beach. It's simply more costly to pay the bill for insurance claims. What's more, the Federal Reserve can't keep up with the Biden inflation despite hiking interest rates to a 23-year high. Reinsurance companies are in the business of purchasing risks from insurance company portfolios. It's only rational for them to forego risky investments when the U.S. Treasuries pay such a healthy return. Inflation has become embedded in the economy, and historic levels of borrowing by the federal government are crowding out the private sector. It only makes sense that the majority would rather point the finger at climate change. To do otherwise means that they acknowledge their reckless spending is a major cause of the problem. So I welcome all today's witnesses, and I look forward to each of your testimonies and hope you guide this committee to focus on our primary responsibility. Thank you.